It's 8:38. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Martin and Ellie.
And it's our favourite time of the morning. So we're going through the papers now with Candy Toldworth and Nigel Nelson. We've got some great stories in the papers today. We're going to try and stay away from the really depressing things that seem to be on the front pages, Candice. So something totally different from you in the Daily Mail. On page 29, it's about a miracle fat jab.
Yes, yeah. So I found this so interesting because everyone's talking about Wegovy. It's this new injectable that suppresses people's appetites and helps them lose weight. And it's sort of seen as this miracle drug, and it's going to make such a big difference. And Rishi Sunak was talking about using it for people who are off work, long-term sickness benefits, basically. But Mariam McGilvery, who's written this article, says there's another side to it. She said she was prescribed the drug when she became very overweight and was struggling to manage it. She said she actually became depressed because she likes eating, and eating actually brings her a lot of pleasure. Mm-hmm. And when she was denied that, she got very down. And I think that that's something that's very missing in this debate. I think it can become very puritanical, like you should eat this and you should be doing this. And we forget that actually food is a highly pleasurable activity that we enjoy.
And we're back to our simple pleasures in life.
Aren't we just? Yes.
We are.
And
food absolutely has got to be one of them.
Yeah, and interestingly, I've had a brain fog. Jeremy Clarkson, he got on the Elon Musk fat jab, and he said precisely the same thing. He said, I was staring at a Sunday roast, which I know I wanted, but my body didn't want it, and he hated it because it stopped him tucking into what he loves.
Yeah, it's actually enjoying yourself. I mean, I don't think I'd have to get an awful lot fatter before I would consider a fat jab, I think, to actually stop me eating. But yes, it certainly should be on that list that food should be a pleasure, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I think the Sunday roast, actually, Nigel. Hang on,
is it there?
I'll find
is it
for
tucked
you.
away there somewhere?
It's number 10.
Well, it's too low down then.
Sitting in front of a Sunday roast is number 10 on that list of life's simple pleasures. Yeah. But, for people who do have an addiction to food and they don't know when to stop.
That's different, though, isn't it?
That's something else.
But that's an illness, and
that's when these sorts of things.
And that's when that could actually help. Just to lose weight is not a good enough reason to start jabbing yourself.
The only thing I worry about with these jabs, and I think it is really good for people, like we say, who have an actual addiction to food and they don't know when to stop, and it's binge eating and the rest. Yeah. But those jabs do have to stop. I mean, the Wegovys of this world, I think it's about a 2-year limit to being on them. You have to learn an awful lot about nutrition, and you have to break that cycle of addiction, because you just come off that jab and put it all back on again, wouldn't you?
That is such a good point. You can't just have a passive model of weight management. Actually, you need to make the lifestyle changes that led to you putting on weight and not being able to lose it. And so much of it can be about mental health, it can be depression, it can be anxiety. There can be so many things going on that you need to address rather than just taking medication.
That's the thing that I worry about with these weight loss jabs, because I feel like we're talking about it a lot at the moment, but it does need to come alongside nutrition and education, which we probably need a bit more of in schools, I would say.
Big time, I would say so.
It's almost like the answer isn't a jab, but just put less in your gob. Anyway, I'm just old-fashioned. Nigel, let's move on to another really fascinating story, and that is Britain needs more babies.
It does indeed, and the reason is to actually keep pensioners with their pensions. So what is happening? This is a study that is showing that in a couple of generations' time, the birth rate will be 40% down. Now, what this means is that at the moment you've got 3 people of working age looking after pensioners. 4 people of working age now. You will then have only 3 people looking after pensioners then. This is quite serious. It's where you get the money from for an aging population which is growing. And there's a kind of myth that people think that they pay for their own retirement through national insurance contributions when they're working. They don't. We're paying for the retirement of current pensioners, and our kids will pay for our retirement when we reach that stage. So with an aging population, it really is important to do something about getting the birth rate up. Miriam Cates, the Tory MP, she's suggesting bringing back tax allowances for children, more free childcare so women can have babies and go back to work. And of course, I would add doing something about child benefit, which the government have been cutting back on, but would actually help if you can increase that.
Got to say though, Candice, they may need to work on their PR, because jump between the sheets and procreate because you need to look after pensioners it's hardly the greatest aphrodisiac,
yes,
as we said. But there is a serious point, and that is there are going to be more older people to look after, and if we're not careful, then people say we need to import. Immigration, get more people in to take care. But actually, this is about more than that, because across the Western world, countries are fizzling out. We're seeing the same in Japan. It's below replacement. Italy is the same. Yeah. There are drives in places like Hungary. So perhaps we do have to incentivise. It's a 3-word letter. It ends in X. Tax.
It could be. Maybe that will work. I mean, I think this is such a big question. I mean, from what I know, reading about this, the number of women having, say, 2 children, 3 children, that stayed very stable. It's the number of women having no children and all that has so massively grown. And I think we need to understand why that is. Is it for financial reasons, childcare reasons, or is it that women's preferences have changed? And if they have changed, I mean, I would really not want to create any sort of coercive system where they're sort of pressured to have babies rather than doing what they want to do with their lives. And then maybe we need to look at the whole system as a whole, because, the fact is it's women who have to have these babies. They're the ones who have to take the career hits, the change to their health, their well-being. If there are things that we can do to help people have more children because they want to have more children, great. But if their genuine value preferences have changed, maybe we have to start thinking about the system as a whole a bit differently. So,
what's your sense, Candice? Because you've got very young children, haven't you? So, I mean, amongst your friends, have you got a sense that women's preferences are changing, and many women are actually just choosing not to have children? Because this article suggests 30% of women in the next 50 years will choose not to be mums.
I think so. I think, nowadays people do prioritise career. I don't think every person is suited to having children, whereas in the past I don't think women were given much of a choice. If you didn't have a child, you were seen as a sad spinster. And nowadays it's not like that.
Well, there's career choices. That is choosing to have children later. And a lot of people in my age group, girlfriends that I've known in the past and colleagues, sort of left it a bit too late, as you say, because unfortunately the body clock is unkind to women, as it's not with men. We see like Robert De Niro, Al Pacino still kind of banging them out, as it were. But it's very expensive having kids. I mean, when I had my second kid, I really thought long and hard about it. This is going to cost a load of money, especially at the moment. I'm sure people out there will concur. It's not something that you take lightly, and all these things, I mean, procrastinating.
Yeah, well, I've got 5 children, and now loads and loads of grandchildren popping up. But yes, I mean, the expense of it comes into it. That for quite a long time, you're quite poor.
You've got 5 grandkids to look after you, so you're sweet.
You're all right, Nigel. Let's have a look at the Times, shall we, Nigel, and your story here about raising the military enlistment age to 18.
Yes, this is a recommendation from the United Nations, who look at these things. And what they're saying is that 16 is too young to join the armed forces, that we're the only country in Europe that actually does that. And they think it should be raised to 18. They worry about some of the abuse youngsters have been facing in Army, Navy, Air Force, about sexual assault cases that we've seen come up. The only problem I can foresee with this is that there's also, in parallel, a move to try and get the voting age down in England to 16.
Yeah.
So if you're an adult at 16, surely you'd be able to join the army at 16. It's one of those tricky ones about when you actually become an adult and are able to make your own choices. But obviously, if you can vote, as you can in Wales and Scotland, they are treated as adults.
Yeah, I wouldn't, Candice, if raising the age is the right thing. We've got a tiny military as it is, and I know from a great deal of friends of mine. I'm friends with a lot of veterans, and they left school often young, without the qualifications that a lot of other people have, and they joined the military, the RAF, the Navy at a young age, and they say it was the making of them as a man, and they came from military families they wanted passionately.
Yes.
to fight for king, country, queen country and defend the realm at age 16, they're allowed to do that. To be limited by age, to me, seems to be prohibitive to their lifestyle choice.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I can think of one or two people specifically whose lives were absolutely turned around by joining the British Army at 16. I mean, some of them actually were living quite chaotic lives. It got them on the straight and narrow, and now they live incredibly decent lives as men. It was a transformative experience for them, and I don't think it should be taken away from them.
I agree. Here.
Well, let us know what you think at home. That's certainly going to get you talking. gbnews@gbnews.com. And I think we've got 1 minute, Candice, for your last story here in the Times. Something about worms living longer. Let's start this.
So, you know, all the anti-aging, longevity stuff that's going on at the moment. So they think they found the elixir of life. It's an amino acid called taurine. And they found that when they gave that to worms and mice, it increased their lifespan by something like 10 to 23%. It hasn't been tested on humans yet. We don't know what it will do. But they think that they may have found the thing that can not only improve people's length of life, but possibly their quality of life as well. Which makes a lot of sense for older grandparents as well. People are having kids later. You know, you can become a grandparent now for the first time in your 60s and 70s. You can really help with picking grandchildren up, stuff like that. So I think this stuff is actually very useful.
There's not enough young people to look after old people as it is. We all have a jab and live forever, and then what do we do? Sit around and just...
And we should see how the worms get on before we start thinking of taking this.
Precisely.
Test it on those worms. Okay, Candice, Nigel, thank you so much. That's really